Yes, the topic is relevant. I explained to you a little bit. This is more conversational than a webinar itself. So I don't put this slide. I might put something that I share something that I find
Okay.
interesting, but because I want to bring this conversation to the
Mm-hmm.
table, to this space, because I mostly work with women. I do
Mm.
work with some men some from time to time, but my main target audience, the ones that go after me and ask me to support, are women in positions of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So they can be very advanced in their careers, or most of the case they are growing their career ladder if they are in the corporate environment. And if they are not in the corporate environment, they are in leading positions, like as you mentioned, startups, or they're running their businesses. And we know as a woman, I say, all the stereotypes are still reality.
Mm.
So we
Sounds like
face
it.
all these challenges in the communication when we are leading teams, when we have to negotiate, and some are external and many are internal. Many are in terms of how we feel confident, how we don't feel confident, how we don't know how to express ourselves, all the imposter syndromes, etc., that we are familiar because we all
Mm-hmm.
have them. And I want to bring this conversation focusing on the high stakes, meaning more difficult conversations, more challenging conversations that they happen in our daily lives, not only in the
Mm-hmm.
professional environment, but in our daily lives. And these conversations, sometimes we can prevent them if we are prepared. And but the important thing is that if we feel that we're inside of those situations, that we know how to perform, how to react, and so react in a more proactive way, in a more positive way, so we can build upon the situation. Because the fact is, we cannot avoid conflicts, and we need conflicts, because without the conflict we cannot grow. If everything is fine, we are going to
Yeah.
be stagnated, because we just feel like, okay, we are not really challenging ourselves. And it's by nature, we need those frictions, we need those challenges, so we can move forward and we can embrace different perspectives and etc. So today, what I brought today, I have some kind of a script which I follow, but I want to talk to you. So give
Mm.
you your feedback, your experience. So let's explore this topic. I have talked in the first webinar. This is the third one. The first
Okay.
one we covered how we become poor listeners when we are under pressure,
Mm.
and I explained how this is a biological behavior. So we all do lose some listening capacity physically when we are under pressure. So I don't know if you knew that. Did you?
Not that it was like a biological thing, but I like from experience, I could see that it happens to me and it happens to people around that like, yeah.
Exactly. What happens in that? I explained to you a little bit, because it's a very interesting thing, because somehow our primal brain understands that when we are under pressure, under stress, hearing is not our most efficient sensor in that moment. We don't need to hear much. We need to have the adrenaline to run or to fight, right?
Mm.
So in that case, we become very attentive to what's happening around us visually. The visual impulse that everything's happening with us is very clear there, but it's not, we are not consciously processing this, because we are just thinking how I'm getting out of this, how I'm going to get out of this. So in our times, because we are not fighting everybody, like punching anybody in the meeting, hopefully, what happens is we are not thinking straight. So instead of, and because of the biological impairment there, we are not really thinking, listening to understand. We are
Mm-hmm.
listening to reply, in the concept of like defending ourselves because we feel attacked. When the situation, there's tension in the meeting, in the conversation, and you feel you have the right, or that your point is valid point, you want people to listen to you, we put ourselves in this position of trying to push our way forward. This is
Mm.
one. Or in this, like I gave the analogy of playing chess, because when you're playing chess, what are you doing? You're here, but you're thinking ahead. You're trying to take 3 steps ahead of everything you might be doing so I can checkmate. So it's the same. We are not really thinking straight here, listening what you're doing right now in detail. We are just trying to think ahead. And this prevents us to really understand what's happening in a way. So it can be a little bit contradictory if we think about it, but that's the way we are in our, without
Built.
being
Yeah.
consciously prepared. And or the other way around, we protect ourselves, we close. And this closure can be stop speaking, really, or the typical, no, it's okay, no, 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 it's a fine, 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 or but really upset, or we close ourselves in terms of our perspective. Is our way or no way? We do
Mm.
not open for any space of conversation. And one thing that if you start following me, you're going to see that I keep repeating over and over that we need to bring back dialogue. We need to bring back dialogue. Why? Because we are living in, since the advent of internet, let's say early 90s, when we start having access to the computers and communicating globally, we connect but we disconnected because our communication is very pretty much a monologue. Do you agree?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
say
I
like,
agree.
is this, is posts, is emails, and now even instead of calling, we send audio messages or video
Um,
messages. So what happens that um we became, um how can I say the word? We became
Asynchronous.
used
Mm.
to be in dialogue. And what I mean being dialogue, because for being dialogue really, where there is a conversation, we need to be present. We need to be listening actively. In the monologue that we live in, and what happens, I send you my view, or I send you a request, I send you a question, and there is this gap until we reply to me, which in, let's say, in a stressful encounter, that is can be advantageous because it gives you time to reflect what you received. So you send me this message, we are in this negotiation, so I do have time to read, to reflect, and then prepare my response. That is good, but the bad side of it, because communication is a skill, we need to practice. And if we do not practice, when we are face to face, we don't have this gap.
Mm.
So then we create a gap in our minds, because while you're speaking, because I think I have to answer immediately, this is another thing that we can question, that I have to answer immediately, I'm already preparing my response. So if I'm preparing my response, I'm not listening. So we are not in dialogue. We are just delivering our views. And if this is in a stressful situation, we are just trying to make our point, like really trying to push our point, instead of relax, lay back, and say, okay, Kiara, I'm listening. And then listen. And then listen. Let Kiara talks. You might interrupt to ask some clarification questions. And then you say, okay, now that I hear you, here is how I feel, or here is how I see the situation. Then we are kind of start building a dialogue, and we start de-escalating situation, because first, there is another thing here that we all need to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood. This is our natural inner feeling as a human being, because that means that you see me, you hear me, and you at least try to understand me. That means I belong, we connect. Hmm?
Hmm.
Do you want to say anything about this? I don't want to be me just speaking here. I'm just sharing with you
Yeah,
what
no,
all this is about.
I think that these are all very interesting points, especially like what you were saying that like one stops listening. So until 2024, I had a different job. I was developing the innovation ecosystem of one of the campuses in University of Helsinki. And it always puzzled me somehow that like there were certain people that were always so emotional and like so like egocentric basically in their way of communicating that I was like, why can't we all be rational people that put the well-being of the ecosystem before our personal needs? And like it really like I was really struggling with this, like what, why is this? And then I started reading Never Split the Difference. I don't know if you know the book.
I
Uh,
love it.
yeah, yeah. And then I think there it's when it really clicked, this thing of like we are emotional beings before being rational beings. And until you kind of like placate the emotional one, you don't really reach so then it's almost like all my assumptions were wrong. And it was really eye-opening. And like since then, I've really started to really reflect on the role of emotions also in communication, because I mean Aristotle already with ethos, pathos, logos, and so on. But I find it very intriguing how much oftentimes our emotions can really cloud the way that we communicate. And yeah, that's the rabbit hole that I'm currently in,
We all are.
exploring at the moment in different
Absolutely.
angles.
And it's true, it's not about denying them, but it's
Exactly.
being in
Yeah.
control of them, but not control meaning suppressing them. It's basically acknowledging, but being control.
Yeah, but
Acknowledging
also
that
like not only our own, but also the other person,
exactly.
because we don't have control. Like we can try to control our own, but then we can only maybe facilitate the other persons. We cannot really too much. But yeah, it's very interesting how much I just got for Christmas from my husband the Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. I don't know
Which
if
one is
you
this one?
this one.
Average mind. Oh, I don't know this one.
It's apparently really nice,
Gonna make
like
a note.
why people are divided by politics and religion. And I think one of the metaphors that he uses is that, like, we think of the rational emotional part of the brain having like same level of control, but actually the metaphor is that like the emotional part is like an elephant and the rational one is the rider, but until you kind of like deal with the elephant, the rider cannot do anything. So then and I think it's a little bit similar also to what was it, thinking fast and slow, kind of system
Yes.
one,
And the
system two
important thing
thinking.
is that we as professionals are human beings. Start be aware of our emotions, because
Yeah,
there is this concept, especially I'm from Brazil, so Latin people, that you have we are considered like more emotional in the way we
yeah,
express
I'm
ourselves,
Italian, so you know.
gesticulate, etc. All this is stereotype as well. We express ourselves in a way. Yes, maybe we are louder, we are more exaggerated, etc. Our way of communicating is not linear. One, two, three, four. I have a German husband. I know what is one, two, three, four communication. Our
Yeah,
communication goes around, 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 around in the intercultural, in this global environment we live, is quite complex to be in a meeting, going through towards reaching an agreement when one thinks linear and one thinks in the collective and the circular. But we do need to be aware of our emotions and not, as I said, repeating, not suppress them, but understand when they come and when they are our allies, because the emotions allows us to perceive the other person, to connect in a more in a deeper level, or when they become our enemies in the sense that they can become the imposter syndrome, that because they might make us feel like fear
Yeah.
or insecure in the situation, or not trusting anybody, and also how they take over us. The important thing is never it be in this control, that your emotions do not take over you and your the rationality in certain level. It's good to be passionate about something, but not in the sense that you're not thinking what you're saying. And this is an important thing because um, in the past, let's say before, I'm now in Barcelona, when I was living in Zurich, for instance, I created several events there, especially for women, and I would invite women to speak on stage. And there was this conversation about being vulnerable. There still is in companies. Say you need to show your vulnerability, and that is a very mm, we have to be careful with
Yeah.
what
Who
is
you?
showing vulnerability, what is showing emotions. We are emotional beings, of course, and when we are sharing something that had made an impact on us, there will be some emotion that we'll carry with what we are sharing. But we have to be careful with what we share in terms of emotionally effect on us,
Yeah.
because you can never share, you should not, I don't like the should word, but it's quite dangerous to share some emotional, some experience that had a strong emotional impact on you without being healed. Because at the
Mm.
end, what people want with sharing your emotions is sharing the transformation process that you went
Mm.
through to reach how you went through that difficult moment. That is what me as an audience want to know. And in that moment, if you're sharing this journey to me,
Yeah,
to
you
the audience,
share it without the bitterness, but more
exactly.
like from
And
a
then
learning
if you
perspective.
even share some tears when you're telling it, but you're sharing the transformation, people will
Mm. Yeah, that's
believe you.
interesting.
But if you're sharing the situation and you are not, it's something that you have not cured, something you have unresolved, and you show that you don't control it, the audience will want to run from the room
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you
yeah.
put
It's
everybody in a very uncomfortable situation.
because it sounds more like a rant than like an
Yes,
actual
sometimes it's not even
empowering
as a
talk.
rant, or as if you upset, but sometimes can be something very painful that you
Mm.
suffered, and this personal is painful, but we are there listening to you. And my first impression as an audience, and I'm talking like as a generalizing as a group of people, I will feel, oh my God, what can I do here in this situation? She is still in pain. I don't know her that much, and this is really uncomfortable, and you're going to put people in a very difficult situation, and this can be victimizing, can be seen as a victimizing the poor
Mm.
me. You know,
Yeah,
it is very, so showing vulnerability, it's complex, and also it needs to be in a safe space, in a place that you feel that's safe for you to
yeah,
share, that people would welcome you with that sharing, and that you feel that you belong to that crowd. That so it's very important to define. I always use the terminology of the containers we are
mm.
when we are communicating. So all different containers, they have different dynamics. So your meeting room there is a different container than your office room. So the dynamics are different, and even the physical space can influence the behavior of people.
Mm.
Mm? And we know for sure, and I'm an architect by trade, so we know for sure that you can build spaces to influence certain behavior,
I think I
right?
remember reading some research that like juries that were around a circular table or a squared or rectangular tables would come to different verdicts or at different speed or something. That like when it's a circular table, then everybody's voice is more heard, but when it's like a rectangular one, then certain positions may take the lead.
That's absolutely sure. And then this can be done um, intentionally. Immediately when you get into the room for meeting room, you see a round table. Immediately you feel like we are all equals because there's nobody sitting at the top of the table. When you have a long rectangular table, there is a clear message. Our squared one is also a little bit more equal, but it's still, I think, the shape because they're corners. Corners can be a separator, right?
Mm.
If you think
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
corners of the table, the separator. So we are here, we are kind of the same level, but we have some separations here like at the round, we are all really equal. So this is also important because in your communication, when you're preparing a meeting, for example, the room plays a part there. And if you watch on TV, those talk shows, that the position of the presenter and the position of the guest is not for no reason that the the there are two things you see there. First, the I'm gonna say the lead, the presenter. Oh my, stop
Yeah,
it.
it does that.
the the presenter, the host, is always lower my hand is always from the audience perspective on the right side. Why is that? Because us from our occidental part of the planet, not oriental, but occidental, we read from left to right. So the right the right side of your screen has more emphasis for the viewer than the left side. And if it's at the top, even more is there's more emphasis there than in the bottom. But still, your story, everything we do starts from left to right, right? We start like in the number one, two, three, four, left to right. So everything grows from left to right. So that in that positioning of them on screen, on their plateau there, it is giving more emphasis to the presenter than to the guest. And also, the another thing they do, as I said, the presenter is seated higher than the guest. So means the presenter does have more importance than the guest, although the guest is important. So all of this, and if you see in meetings, some offices of people that arrive, their seats are higher than yours, right? You
Mm.
sit in front of your boss, sitting higher than yours. That is intentional as well. This is intentional to show, like I'm the king, you come here, I'm above you physically. So all of these are internal messages, the cognitive message that goes around. But then, if you think about when we are back to our topic of high stakes conversation, when we are on all this, yeah, the emotion is boiling inside of us, it's very difficult to be attentive to all of this information in a very conscious manner. But we do need to find our own tools to ground ourselves to be able to deal with the situation. So today I want just to go a little bit over the I chose the topic for today as the cost of winning in high stakes conversation because um, what I want to compare here is with this winning. Some people that gets like is my point, is my view, and they push really hard for to win the situation instead of finding a common agreement. Because some people even like the with from the book of Stephen Covey with the 7 habits, it comes the win-win, which is
Mm.
great. But I think the win win, I personally think sometimes the win win can be a little bit compromising because it feels like that, okay, we agree that I win here and you win there. So we have those winnings. And but there are many other things that are not, we had to leave behind. So we had to compromise to get the win, and win is win, I win this and you win that, and we agree on that. Where the best option would be, okay, we have our differences, but let's try to find a common agreement. So building something together gives a better perspective to both, in the terms that we feel like I'm not compromising. We are building something together. We have our differences, we acknowledge our differences, but we still can build something together. So that is the best option. But sometimes when we cannot reach, at least a win-win should be our goal. However, then here for the topic of today, some people might try to push to this win, to be right, to hold their authority, and to close a point or a deal because they they want their position, they want whatever they want, and they feel it, they own that as well. And what we have to be attentive in, this is what I want to bring here today, is to be attentive if this winning in short term is not jeopardizing or damaging a winning in long term, and the winning of our trust, losing of our trust. So that is very important, because what situation this can happen. We all know that in certain meetings we have some colleagues that might be more forceful, and we all know, I work with a woman, I mentioned to you in the beginning, that they're still the ones that speak over women, or they're still the ones that take your idea and take the ownership of your ideas. So in those situations, sometimes it's very difficult not to try to push your way through, because you have all these dynamics happening. And how do you try to make that colleague to stop going over everybody and listen? Or how do you prevent that other colleague not steal your idea and take as his? And so then you can build that environment where everybody has a piece of a same share and can share their ideas in a dialogue manner, right? So the important thing here, I believe from my experience, and then you can share yours, that I would love to hear from you, is the important thing happens for everything that happens before the meeting. And when you are the leader or the facilitator of such a meeting, this is why I talk about the container dynamics. You need to be aware of the dynamics of the people that will be seated at that table, even if it's a round one. What they are looking for, and what are their, even their personalities. So you make sure that everybody has the same share. So this is why it's so important to have an agenda of the meeting. And believe it or not, sometimes I'm shocked to know, but it's the reality, how many meetings are run without any agenda, because people think, oh, I don't have time, let's just go. And
Yeah,
then
I understand the frustration because I also don't like if there's no agenda to the meeting. It feels that it
and
doesn't go
it still
anywhere.
happens, right? So it is the full, having an agenda is the full responsibility of someone leading the meeting, or the designated person to assist that person. But you cannot go in a meeting without agenda, but it happens. So what happens here is how we maintain the same level of how can I say, the opportunities for people to express their ideas without jeopardizing the meeting, and leading the meeting to a conclusion, objection, an objective. Because sometimes what happens is people get into the meeting, they talk, and then when they're in the meeting, they realize they had to bring some more content for certain of the questions that were raised, and the meeting just finished without any conclusion, without anything, just with the like, oh, we need to meet again because we need to get more information about this. So
My
it's
experience is also that, that when there is no agenda, the meeting turns into a rant more than something constructive. Like it's just like everything that doesn't work, and people start highlighting everything that doesn't work instead of like constructively trying to decide on something that could work. So that's why I really always try to have an agenda because otherwise it
yes.
doesn't go anywhere.
Yes, and in this also, and this is when it gives how can I say, this gap, this, because there is no clear follow through. People don't know where they are going,
Yeah.
and we know that there's a lot of things going on. Many things have to be solved, and some people are under pressure, whatever it is. That gives the opportunity, the cracks for people to start trying to push their ideas, and that is breaking dialogue instead of bringing to dialogue. And that is where I take communication start again as the monologue, but face to face, where I say something, you say something at the top of what I say. And I reply to something at the top that sometimes that doesn't even have connection with what you said, because I just want to my point. And then we go like this and we don't reach this agreement. So the important thing is high stakes communication, conversations, they really need us, they really need preparation. We cannot underestimate, it's not only about preparing your point. You have to think strategically.
Mm.
You have to think, what do I want to happen in this meeting? Let's say you are not the one leading the meeting, but you attending the meeting, and the meeting doesn't have any agenda. So it's a disaster for the start. But if you're prepared enough, you would be able to at least deliver your message, uh, put your point at the table in a logical sequence without getting lost and without getting completely out of ground or out of balance because of all the confusions that are happening around you. Because what happens in the signals that you can have in professional conversation, that when people are trying to push the, to push to make their point and to win, is when they always trying to have the last word. They are trying to be always right. They close the conclusion without allowing the space for people to still deliberate. People are still deliberating about the topic, and then the topic is closed. And they also avoid the visible doubt. And here is an important thing for all of us. When I said at the very beginning, the feeling that most people have when you are not really trained in your communication skills is that every question needs an answer now. First, not every question needs an answer. And second, you can take your time to answer the question. Doesn't mean like taking a minute, like give me 5 minutes, I'm going to think about it. But is every question needs some, you need to absorb it, and you need to reflect, and then you respond. That is just a few seconds. But many people, and especially women, tend to believe that they need to answer immediately, because if they don't, they would come across um, as they lack confidence, or they don't know enough, and they think that it shows they don't own the topic or don't have authority. And it's exactly the contrary. Because with the time, when you have the confidence and the groundness to allow that, those few seconds before answering, it shows that you're not afraid of silence. Being afraid of silence is one of the most um, impediments that people have in their communication. So
Mm.
this need of filling the silence with something, because silence makes people uncomfortable. But when you control silence, it shows authority. It's the other way around. When you ask me a question and I give my time to, even in the split and never split the difference is a technique that he uses always
Yeah.
to repeat what the other person said, the last three words, but also repeating the other what the other person said. It shows, gives the person, remember, everybody wants to be listened, heard, and understood. So that's, I'm listening to you, I'm hearing you, and I'm trying to understand you. So you are leaning in. And if you do this consciously, that really works on your favor, not on your favor in terms of taking advantage of the other person. You can do that in a, like taking advantage, as in the book that he does for very
Hmm.
high stakes, like terrorists negotiations. He using that to take advantage of the situation. But in that sense of our environment that we have high stakes conversation, but not at that level, it is, you are helping to build this bridge between you and the other person, this bridge of communication. Because at the end, communication is about building this bridge that allows me to go there where Kiara is and try to understand the world from where you see metaphorically. So then I can shape my message for in a language with examples, with the stories that will you will immediately feel that is relevant to you.
Mm.
And because one of the biggest mistakes in communications is this: people share their own. They prepare a lot. They prepare the content. They prepare the presentations, the slides, the statistics, the facts and figures, etc. But then you come from a different world. Your expectations are different. So I'm here coming from assumption that what I have to offer you is something that you will value. And sometimes you don't value it, not because you don't value me or my expertise, anything. You just don't value it because you don't understand. It's not relevant for you.
When
And
I
when you
do,
see all of this in a high stakes environment,
yeah.
you can imagine the escalation of the problems.
When I do these communication trainings, I always start from the audience, because if you don't understand who you're talking to, chances are that you're not communicating it right, whatever it is. You, yeah.
It's
So
like my
it's,
mantra with my clients is know your audience, know your
yeah,
audience, and know
yeah,
your audience. Just like
yeah.
the audience, it's even there's a saying in sales. We use that in sales and marketing, which says something like that. Maybe you heard it, but anyways, it says something like this: people don't buy what they need; they buy what they want. So our job
Mm.
is to give them, make them feel like that we are offering them what they want, but we sell them what they need.
Mm.
So that is the challenge in our communication, because people only buy what they want, and this is emotional again. So if I'm trying to reason in terms of facts and figures, nah. So I need to make that in a way that people can, they need to feel that this is something that's important for them, that they want to have that. Because when they want
Yeah.
something, they find a way to get it. But then when you provide in them, you can shape that in a way that you give them what exactly what they need. You're not betraying people, or you're not manipulating people. It's just you reframing how this exchange is, it happens. And the
It's very
same
interesting.
is in your communication. And in that book that you mentioned, the
Never split the
with
difference.
difference, never split the difference. I remember, I love the example of the late night DJ. Remember?
Late night DJ. I think I'm still halfway through the book, so I haven't encountered that
Okay, so
point.
I'm not going to share with you, but he talks about using the late night DJ voice
Mm.
to persuade. What is the late night DJ voice? Is a deep voice, paused, and that says something and stops. Give that silence, and
Mm.
then continues. What happened with that voice? I mentioned that we feel uncomfortable with silence, right? So in the negotiation process, the silence is your superpower because you get people to talk more. Because every time you say something, but you give this silence and you just remain there quietly looking, the person will feel like, I need to fill this gap. So you don't want to be that person. This is why we train our communication. We want to be the person that works with the silence. One public figure that uses silence quite well, and I always mention politics apart, is Obama.
Mm.
Obama has a very good control of silence. You see that he talks when he's speaking, he goes speaking, looking to everybody, and lands there with a deep voice, calm voice. He gives it out those few seconds, then he looks to the other side, and then he says something, lands. He allows what he says to have weight and to
Mm.
people to internalize, and then he continues. And he does the same with interviews. He never answers immediately. So that allows this gap. And when we are in a high stakes conversation, in difficult conversation, we need to build this gap. We need to build this gap also because the other person is accelerated. And when we start giving those gaps, those pauses, you start de-escalating the energy in the room. And after a while, people will start feeling more relaxed and more grounded if you do not follow the same speed. Because if you say something, I say something else with the same energy, this goes only up. And it's like you say something to me and I come relaxed and I stop. And you say again and I continue. That eventually you start going down because you start feeling even in misalignment and embarrassed. And our dynamics in group, we need to feel aligned. So we are together because that's part of our cognitive needs and behavior. So here about the winning, we have to be very careful. I'm not saying that there won't be situations that we have to push forward, especially when you see there's no consensus, but then your idea and you were convinced with your idea, so then it's going to be you convinced, me convinced is not the ideal. But the important thing is that we are also aware that when we are trying to push ourselves forward, we might win now, but we are losing many things along the line, and we need to see if it's worth losing all these other things along the line,
Yeah.
because especially if you are in a leading position yourself, you have a team under you, and if you are that person that's always pushing your way, means that you're not listening uh, to others' opinions. So it's going to get to the point that you're not, instead of building this safe space for people to open up and share openly their ideas where you can co-create, you are reducing the openness, and people get to the point that they will feel like, I don't care, I'm not going to say anything because it doesn't matter. And this, unfortunately, I find, I don't know your experience, but I find in the corporate environment that I work with, women I work with, women in the high positions of leadership, that they have, because of the position, a great opportunity to influence change. But some of them are so tired of the toxic environment that they would say, I don't care anymore. I don't do anything. I
Mm.
don't care. I just, especially when they are in the senior level, they say, oh, I'm going to retire in a few years. I don't care anymore. So that's very sad. So, and this is when these kind of dynamics happens too often in an environment where people feel their voice is not heard because others have been trying to win no matter what. And of course, honest feedback disappear because someone's always pushing, right? Is not listening. It's all about the listening that's not present. So the agreements are done in a way superficial, or even if it's majority, is because people just say that's
Yeah,
what they
because they don't care. Yeah.
they don't care anymore. And the resistance is even like the resistance before could have started being very clashy in the end, or the ones who are always been clashing because they are unhappy, they leave or they shut down. And there's no co-creation and growth in that environment. So
Mm.
winning, the cost of winning, it can be very, very high, and we have to be very careful because sometimes we want to win our proposal, our project, our ideas, pitching for something. We want to win that, but we always have to make sure the what are the boundaries in terms of our principles and values. That what are the costs of winning something? There some things are negotiables and some things are not negotiables. But
Mm.
above all, is important to understand the dynamic of that environment. So we go for a more co-creative mindset than my way or no way. Anything else you would like to add or ask about this topic or share something for your own experience?
Yeah, maybe something to share is that because I work with researchers most of the time, and I noticed that for them, this acknowledging a communication that involves emotion, it goes really against their own training. Because of course, as a researcher, you're trained to be objective all the time. I mean, I was also a researcher previously, so like you need to communicate kind of like only the logos. Um, and then the other two parts, it's really hard to drill why you need, well, ethos still, it's still understandable, but the pathos, like this emotional connection of
Yeah.
engaging your listener, it's really a struggle because they think that, oh, if I need to make an emotional connection, it means that I cannot be completely objective, while it's just like leveraging emotions to make the message sink in more profoundly. But then that's something that I find very interesting because, yeah, as a community, academia is like, I think there's almost no acknowledgement even that we are emotional beings. And it's like, okay, we always communicate. Like, but so I just find it very fascinating. And I'm always trying to find ways in which I can make this thing click, basically, because, yeah.
Yes, it's
But
interesting and it's real what you say because especially people when they are in a more pragmatic type of environment or industry where they need to deliver reports, they need to deliver statistics, etc. They believe is a misunderstanding.
yeah.
I personally believe they believe that their job is to be factual and full stop, but as a human being, we are not really fully factual. Or the facts are there, but the interpretation, our interpretation, as much factual we bring, as much fact we bring to make our interpretation, there's also our own experience
Yeah.
when collecting that information. And I think here the important thing for all of us and what people many people do not develop throughout their lives or their careers is the trying to understand their own emotions and their feelings and build this communication with oneself to have those moments where you say why am I feeling this way, why when Kiara said that that triggered on me this feeling, or and then the next step, the feeling of what, to name those emotions, because it's very different if I say to you, when she said that to me I felt frustrated, right? Or when she said that I was absolutely um, mad, mad because XYZ. Frustrated can be something more introspective, or even when say someone said, "Oh, that hurt me," that it was is. I classify those some emotions are internal and external. And the internal ones are the more complex and the more difficult because it requires us to really go inside ourselves, take that moment to understand them. Why did I feel that way? What can I do instead when someone says that so I do not feel that way? It's not like we cannot ignore any emotions. We have to anchor them. We have to acknowledge them and decide how we are going to deal with them. And the external emotions, with like I'm mad, I'm angry, and I think upset is more external one. Is like is something that affects you here in a moment. Like it's a bomb that explodes.
Mm.
And those emotions sometimes they can be even positive because they can trigger you to a reaction, say, in a proactive way, not a reaction to attack, but a reaction. No, 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 no. I'm not going to accept that. I am going to do this because I'm going to prove that I can. I can. So those some of those reactions, those can trigger us emotionally in a way to push us forward.
Eh,
These more introspective are the more dangerous one because I think they what they require us to go inside, and that requires a time frame for us to be there and deal with them,
Yeah,
and that can be more difficult in a group context to move forward because you need to allow yourself this time to process
yeah.
that feeling because that emotion triggered some feeling inside of you that made you feel sad, made you
I,
feel not
yeah,
understood, made you feel like undusted, and we don't want to feel like that the situation was the worst you can do someone is that something is not fair, and he uses that fair in the book
mm,
as a word for negotiation, that you say
mm,
you're not fair. Everybody wants to be fair if they are
mm,
honest, but
yeah,
when they're not honest, they don't care.
yeah,
But when he's saying that you're not being fair is really um, requires calibration because the other one say, no, 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 I am fair. Hold on a second, let's review this. No,
mm,
so it's important for us to understand, and back to what you said with the people, it requires people to we have to understand that we are complex beings. We cannot only operate on the facts and figures. And no matter how much
yeah,
we think we are good in whatever we do, and we have to deliver facts and figures, but we have the emotional side of us that come along with when we are even preparing those facts and figures that are part of the story we want to share. And in the end, especially in communication, presentations, high stakes communication, sharing, being able to share that emotional experience throughout the process as my own perspective when I was dealing with this, or how I see what made me to get to this conclusion is the most important thing. It should not be ignored in this presentation.
mm, yeah. I think also the fact that there are certain emotions that might trigger action better than others. Like, for instance, I used to be a cancer researcher, and then we know that the narrative of like fighting cancer and seeing the cancer as the enemy is actually more detrimental to the patients. Because cancer is it's a disease that you never really cure, you just go in remission. So then accepting to have cancer and that you have to live with it and that there will be ups and downs and so on, it's much more effective for the mental health of the patient than. And same for the climate change. They have seen that all this guilting people into, oh, you're destroying the planet, does not lead to any positive improvement, basically. So, like all these negative emotions that one wants to put out there to trigger that, like, this is not okay, they're actually having the positive effect at the end of the day. So,
Exactly.
even in shaping the communication, you really need to pick which emotions trigger, because not all emotions, I mean, they might get you attention, but they might not get you action. Um,
Very
so,
good point, Kiara. Because it's exactly this is as a retraining our brain. No, we know we can retrain our brain. And one thing that I share with my clients is your brain doesn't understand the no. No, it's like because I say this machine here is here to only two functions to solve problems and save energy. So if you say, I don't want this, and you keep repeating, I don't want this, you reinforce just reinforce that you don't want, but you're not telling it what you want instead. So what
mm,
you're saying in your example is in essence exactly the same. If you say,
mm,
oh, the cancer is your enemy, you have to fight it, you have to fight it, but you're not telling me what can I do instead to have a better
mm,
quality of life.
yeah.
And that is our options, that the way we should see the situations that are coming towards us in in a way not favorable. We say, no, I don't want this. It's okay. We should know what we don't want, but we need to know what we want instead, because every time that
Mm.
happens,
Offer
we have an
alternative.
action.
Yeah.
You have an alternative, because one example you can do it, and I don't know, you have done this with the people you train, because you mentioned that you train. You ask them what you don't want. Oh, the list comes very easily. Oh, I don't want this, and then I said, but what do you want?
Yeah.
Silence. It takes
Yeah, no, I
forever.
think that this is very typical. It's
Yeah,
like much easier to also list what doesn't work than to say, how do we make things work? Like, what is the action that would make things work? Because
exactly.
that's much harder to accomplish.
Yeah,
But
because they
yeah.
don't, they immediately are related to our pain. We don't want to feel pain, and pain can be fear, can be many other
Hmm.
forms of pain. So then we try to avoid it, but we focus on like everything that's negative. So as we know, the news, everything
Yeah.
that's negative attracts our attention because it comes from our inner survival.
Mm-mm.
So I want to close now because